In January 1991, 8 Apache helicopters crossed into Iraqi airspace at 50 feet, destroyed 2 radar stations in 4 minutes flat, and tore a 20-mile hole in Saddam Hussein's air defense network. Hundreds of coalition warplanes poured through the gap before Baghdad even knew what happened, but that was over 3 decades ago. The Apache has evolved into something far more dangerous since then. So what are the capabilities that Iran and other adversaries are only now discovering the hard way? Number 7. The gun that follows your eyes. When the Apache first entered service with the United States Army in 1986, it carried a piece of technology that no other combat helicopter in the world possessed. The Integrated Helmet and Display Sighting System, known as IHADSS, was the first operational augmented reality combat helmet ever deployed in warfare. Built by Honeywell, it used a monocular display with a 40 by 30 degree field of view that projects targeting imagery, flight instruments, and infrared camera feeds directly onto a small lens positioned in front of the pilot's right eye. The concept itself sounds almost simple. The pilot or co-pilot gunner looks at a target, and the Apache's 30mm M230 chain gun physically swivels to track their head movements, pointing exactly where they look. Infrared emitters on the cockpit frame detect the helmet's position, and the nose-mounted thermal camera slaves itself to that same orientation. Wherever the crew member turns their head, the gun and the camera follow in real time. Picture an Apache gunner flying over the Persian Gulf at night. They glance toward a fast attack boat in the water below, and the chain gun locks onto that target before the gunner even reaches for the trigger. The M230 fires 30mm high explosive rounds at a rate of 625 per minute. At the distances where helicopter engagements typically happen, those rounds arrive before the target has any chance to react, but aiming the gun is only part of what the helmet does. It also lets the crew see in the dark. The IHADSS also serves as the crew's primary night vision system. The Apache's nose-mounted PNVS camera, the pilot night vision system, feeds a live infrared image into the helmet display. During nap of the Earth flight, the pilot sees the terrain rendered in green and white thermal contrast while simultaneously reading altitude, airspeed, and heading data overlaid on that same image. The entire system allows Apache crews to operate in total darkness as effectively as other aircraft operate in broad daylight. What makes this capability so dangerous to an adversary like Iran is the speed of engagement. There is no delay between identifying a threat and aiming the weapon. The human eye becomes the targeting reticle. And in the close range, fast-moving engagements that define combat over the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, that fraction of a second matters more than almost any other advantage. But the IHADSS is just the Apache's nervous system. The next capability on this list is the sensor that gives the AH-64 a brain capable of tracking over 100 threats at once. Number 6, the radar that sees through sandstorms. If the helmet system gave the Apache its reflexes, the Longbow fire control radar gave it omniscience. Developed jointly by Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman under the Longbow LLC partnership beginning in 1985, the ANAPG-78 is a millimeter wave radar housed in a distinctive dome mounted above the Apache's main rotor hub. That elevated position is not an accident. By sitting above the rotor disc, the radar can scan for targets while the helicopter remains hidden behind terrain, trees, or buildings, with only the radar dome exposed above cover. It was the first time a radar system with the sophistication of a fighter jet's targeting suite had been miniaturized and mounted on a helicopter rotor mast. The Longbow radar operates in the Ka-band frequency range, and its effective detection range extends to 8 kilometers. Within that envelope, it can simultaneously detect, classify, and prioritize up to 128 ground and aerial targets. The system processes this information and presents the crew with the top 16 priority threats in fewer than 6 seconds. During Army operational testing in 1995, 6 Longbow Apache prototypes were pitted against a larger force of standard AH-64A Apaches in simulated combat. The threat array was designed to replicate a 2004-era battlefield with heavy armor, integrated air defense, and electronic countermeasures. The Longbow Apaches demonstrated a 4-fold increase in lethality over the original model, hitting far more targets in the same engagement window. They also proved to be 720 20% more survivable, meaning the longbow crews completed their missions and returned to base at rates that dwarfed what the original Apache could achieve. Those numbers are impressive on paper, but the real significance of the longbow becomes clear when you understand what it enables the Apache to do with its missiles. The radar works in conjunction with the longbow Hellfire missile designated AGM-114L, which carries its own millimeter wave seeker. This combination enables a capability that fundamentally changes the math of aerial combat. The Apache locks onto a target using the longbow radar, fires the missile, and immediately breaks away to cover. The missile guides itself to the target without the helicopter needing to maintain any line of sight. This is the fire and forget capability that defense planners spent decades pursuing, and it works through rain, fog, smoke, sandstorms, and the kind of battlefield dust that would blind an optical targeting system entirely. Against an adversary like Iran, the implications are stark. A longbow Apache operating over the Persian Gulf can identify and engage multiple fast attack boats or coastal defense positions simultaneously in any weather, at night, from behind terrain masking, without ever exposing itself to return fire long enough for a surface-to-air missile to acquire a lock. And the longbow's advantages compound across a formation. A radio modem integrated into the Apache sensor suite allows the targeting data from one helicopter's radar scan to be shared instantly with other Apaches and ground units in the area. In practice, a single radar-equipped Apache can pop up behind a ridgeline, scan the battlefield in seconds, drop back into cover, and transmit targeting solutions to other helicopters in the formation that never needed to expose themselves at all. Those receiving Apaches can fire their own longbow Hellfires on the shared data without ever turning on their own radars. The result is a coordinated strike from multiple directions launched from concealment against targets that had no warning they were being tracked. That is a problem without a clean solution, and it only gets worse when you consider what the Apache can do before the radar even matters, by arriving completely undetected in the first place. Number 5. The helicopter that flies below radar. On the night Task Force Normandy crossed into Iraq in 1991, the Apache crews flew their helicopters at an altitude of roughly 50 feet above the featureless desert. They maintained complete radio silence, total blackout of navigation lights, and relied on MH-53 J-PAVE low helicopters equipped with terrain following radar and early GPS systems to navigate the 90 miles to their targets. At the time, the Apaches themselves had no GPS capability. The PAVE lows, carrying the most advanced navigational suite of any aircraft in the world at that point, served as pathfinders across a landscape with no landmarks, no roads, and no features to navigate by. The Apaches were chosen for this mission because of 3 specific characteristics. First, their low infrared signature made them difficult to detect with heat-seeking systems at that altitude. Second, their reduced radar cross-section, combined with the extreme low altitude, kept them below the detection threshold of Iraqi surveillance radars. Third, their ability to carry standoff weapons meant they could destroy the radar stations from 4 kilometers away without overflying the targets. Colonel Dick Cody, who commanded Task Force Normandy, was asked by General Norman Schwarzkopf whether he could guarantee 100% success. Cody said yes, and the Apaches delivered. In 4.5 minutes, every piece of radar equipment at both stations was destroyed. 27 Hellfire missiles, 100 Hydra, 70 rockets, and thousands of 30mm rounds tore through communications vans, electrical generators, and Soviet-built flat-eye, squat-eye, and spoon-rest radar systems. Nearly 100 coalition aircraft arrived 22 minutes later and flew through the 20-mile corridor completely undetected. How do you defend against an attacker you cannot see, flying below your radar coverage, arriving in total silence? That question has haunted air defense planners from Baghdad to Tehran ever since. General Schwarzkopf later said the Apaches had plucked out the eyes of Iraq's air defense network. This nap of the Earth capability has only grown more refined in the decades since Desert Storm. Modern AH-64E Apaches carry upgraded navigation suites, digital terrain databases, and the Arrowhead modernized target acquisition system that replaced the original TADS PNVS sensor package. The improved infrared resolution means crews can identify and classify threats at greater distances while maintaining the ultra-low altitudes that keep them invisible to enemy radar coverage. The relevance to the current conflict with Iran is direct. Iranian coastal defense systems and surveillance radars along the Persian Gulf shoreline are designed to detect threats approaching at conventional altitude. An Apache formation skimming the wave tops at 50 feet using terrain and offshore platforms for concealment operates in a detection gap that most radar networks struggle to cover. The innovation behind the original 230-gallon external fuel tanks used in Task Force Normandy deserves a mention here as well. The mission called for a 400-mile strike radius, far beyond the Apache's normal combat range. Colonel Cody's team fitted wing tanks that had never been used in combat before, pushing the helicopter past its maximum gross combat weight by 1,500 pounds. It was a calculated risk, flying overweight at night 50 feet above the desert with no GPS on board the Apaches themselves. They pulled it off without losing a single helicopter, and every radar target was confirmed destroyed. But flying low across the desert or the Persian Gulf undetected is only half the equation. What happens when the Apache does not even need to be near the battlefield to control what happens on it? Now, number 4, the Drone Commander. The most dramatic evolution of the Apache in the last 5 years has nothing to do with its own weapons or sensors. It has to do with the aircraft's ability to command other platforms from the cockpit. The Manned-Unmanned Teaming Extended System, known as MUMTX and developed by L3 Harris Technologies, adds a distinctive new mast extension and communications hardware that allows Apache crews to directly control the sensors, flight paths, and in some cases the weapons of unmanned aerial vehicles. This gives the crew real-time control over remote assets. The primary drones integrated into this system are the RQ-7 Shadow V2, a tactical reconnaissance platform, and the MQ-1C Grey Eagle, the armed long-endurance drone derived from the original Predator. In practical operation, an Apache crew can task a Grey Eagle to fly dozens of miles ahead of their position, scanning terrain with its own sensors and transmitting live video back to the helicopter in real time. The Apache crew evaluates the feed, identifies targets, and can either direct the drone to engage with its own Hellfire missiles or use the targeting data to plan their own approach. Multiple drones can be controlled simultaneously, creating a distributed sensor network that dramatically extends the area the Apache formation can surveil and strike. The system also facilitates high-bandwidth data transfer to ground units and other aircraft, making the Apache a mobile communications node in the battle space. Under the current fielding plan, roughly 15 out of every 24 AH-64E Apaches in a standard Apache battalion will receive the MUMTX hardware, with the remaining aircraft retaining their mast-mounted longbow radars. A single formation can mix radar-equipped and MUMTX-equipped helicopters to maximize both targeting capability and unmanned reach. Why does that matter so much? Because it means an Apache crew can identify and destroy a target from beyond the horizon without the enemy ever knowing a manned helicopter was involved. In January 2026, the United States Army activated Foxtrot Troop at Fort Riley, Kansas, as the first dedicated launched effects unit paired with AH-64E Apaches. The concept behind Foxtrot Troop is straightforward. Instead of pushing the Apache itself forward into contested airspace to find targets, the crew launches expendable drones ahead of their position. These drones serve as reconnaissance scouts, communications relays, and even decoys to expose hostile radar emitters and air defense positions without risking the manned helicopter. Colonel Eric Megadumian, the brigade commander, described the activation as part of a broader push to make formations more agile and more resilient against the kind of dense air defenses that a peer adversary like Iran fields along its coastline. From Iran's perspective, the problem compounds. The Apache is no longer just the helicopter in front of you. It is the helicopter controlling assets you cannot see, operating from ranges you did not expect, building a picture of the battlefield that you have no way to contest. But controlling drones is only half of the Apache's relationship with unmanned systems. It turns out the helicopter is just as effective at destroying them. Number 3, the drone killer. While the Apache's ability to command drones grabbed headlines in military technology circles, a more immediately urgent capability emerged in parallel. The Apache has proven itself as one of the most effective counter-drone platforms in the world. In August 2025, during a live fire exercise called Operation Fly Swatter at Marine Corps Air Station New River in North Carolina, H-64E version 6 Apaches from the South Carolina Army National Guard engaged 14 drone targets using all 4 of the helicopter's primary weapon systems, and the results were decisive. 13 kills out of 14 engagements using the Apache's current software and sensors against live drone targets. If you're finding this useful, consider subscribing. We cover military aviation and defense technology every week, and there are still 2 more capabilities on this list that you will not want to miss. The Apache crews used joint air-to-ground missiles guided by the Longbow fire control radar, Hellfire missiles with both radar frequency and semi-active laser seekers, Hydra 70 rockets fitted with the Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System guidance package, and the M230 30mm chain gun. Buddy Lace tactics were also validated, where one Apache designates the target with its laser, while another fires the precision-guided munition. The key insight from Operation Fly Swatter was not just the kill ratio, it was the variety of engagement options the Apache brought to the fight. Against a cheap, slow-flying drone, firing a full-size Hellfire missile might be overkill. The APKWS guidance kit turns an unguided Hydra 70 rocket into a laser-guided precision weapon at a fraction of the missile's cost. And for the smallest targets, the 30mm chain gun can dispatch them for pennies per round compared to the thousands of dollars a guided munition costs. This capability moved from testing to active combat in under a year. And the real-world results over the Persian Gulf confirmed what the exercise data suggested. In the current conflict, United Arab Emirates Air Force H-64E Apaches have been intercepting and destroying Iranian Shahed-class one-way attack drones over the Persian Gulf using their 30mm chain guns. Footage released by the United Arab Emirates Ministry of Defense shows the Apaches maneuvering at low altitude over open water, tracking the slow-flying drones through their targeting systems and destroying them with short controlled bursts of cannon fire. The economics of this approach are significant. An interceptor missile like a Patriot PAC-3 can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars per shot, while a Shahed drone might cost a fraction of that. A burst from the Apache's chain gun costs dramatically less and remains fully effective against the lightweight structure of most loitering munitions, but the cost advantage only tells part of the story. The real question is whether the Apache can keep up when the drones arrive in swarms. Since the current war began, 941 Iranian drones have been detected over the UAE, with 876 intercepted through combined defense systems including Apache helicopters, surface-to-air missiles, and Emirati fighter aircraft. Iranian drones like the Shahed family present specific interception challenges that play to the Apache's strengths. These drones typically fly at low altitude and modest speed, allowing them to slip beneath conventional radar coverage. Their small radar cross-section and limited infrared signature complicate early detection, particularly when launched in large numbers against a single area. A ground-based radar station might struggle to track them through terrain clutter. But the Longbow radar, elevated above the rotor hub of an Apache flying at patrol altitude, looks down on the same clutter and picks the drones out of it. Unlike a static air defense battery, the Apache can reposition rapidly to threaten sectors, providing mobile hard-kill protection wherever the swarm appears. Think about that for a moment. A helicopter originally designed in the 1970s to destroy Soviet tanks on the plains of Central Europe is now one of the most effective anti-drone platforms on the planet. The capabilities that make that possible were engineered into the airframe decades before the drone threat even existed. Now, the next 2 capabilities on this list are the ones that truly separate the Apache from every other attack helicopter in the world. Number 2, the helicopter that refuses to die. Every Apache that rolls off the Boeing assembly line in Mesa, Arizona carries approximately 2,500 pounds of armor and ballistic protection designed around one principle: keep the crew alive. Its tandem cockpit, with the pilot seated behind and above the co-pilot gunner, features boron carbide and Kevlar armor panels capable of withstanding direct hits from 23mm anti-aircraft rounds. The airframe was designed from the outset to absorb this level of punishment without losing structural integrity. Both the compartment and the composite rotor blades can take 23mm hits and keep flying. Shielding between the two cockpit stations ensures that at least one crew member survives even if the other station takes a catastrophic hit. Self-sealing fuel tanks close punctures from ballistic impacts before significant fuel loss can occur. The landing gear is engineered for crash-worthy energy absorption under MIL STD 1290 standards, meaning the airframe can sustain a hard impact landing and still protect the crew from fatal injury. Crash attenuating seats and an isolated fuel system further minimize fire risk during a forced landing. The rotor blades deserve their own mention here. Made from composite materials rather than traditional metal, they offer greater resistance to battle damage while simultaneously reducing the Apache's radar signature. A conventional metal rotor blade struck by anti-aircraft fire can shatter or deform catastrophically. The composite blades on the Apache can absorb hits from 23mm rounds and continue generating lift. During Task Force Normandy, Colonel Cody's wingman took 3 bullet holes through the rotor blades from Iraqi ground fire and flew the Apache back to base without incident. But the survivability systems that emerged in later years went beyond passive armor. They gave the Apache the ability to fight back against threats it could not even see. Fight back. In 2012, 24 United States Army AH-64D Apaches were equipped with the Ground Fire Acquisition System, GFAS. This system consists of 2 sensor pods that work in concert with the helicopter's existing targeting hardware and a thermographic camera that precisely locates muzzle flashes in all light conditions across a 120-degree visual field. When someone on the ground fires at an Apache equipped with GFAS, the system detects the muzzle flash, identifies the shooter's position, and presents that location to the crew for immediate engagement. The Apache also carries a comprehensive suite of electronic countermeasures, including radar warning receivers, laser warning systems, and chaff and flare dispensers designed to defeat incoming missiles. Infrared countermeasures work to confuse heat-seeking threats, while the helicopter's defensive suite provides continuous awareness of the electromagnetic environment around the aircraft. The cumulative effect of these layered survivability systems showed up clearly in the 1995 operational testing, where the Longbow Apache demonstrated that 720% survivability improvement over the original model. And in more than 1.3 million combat flight hours accumulated across conflicts in Iraq, Afghanistan, and now operations against Iran, the Apache has consistently returned its crews to base under conditions that would have destroyed less resilient aircraft returned to base. But the final capability on this list is the one that ties everything else together, and it is the one that makes the Apache truly irreplaceable on the modern battlefield. Number 1, the battlefield internet. Every capability on this list, the helmet display, the longbow radar, the drone control, the counter-drone warfare, becomes exponentially more dangerous when connected. And that is exactly what the latest AH-64E Version 6 Apache does. The Apache is no longer a standalone gunship. It is a network-centric weapons platform equipped with the Joint Tactical Information Distribution System and Link 16 data connectivity. In real time, the Apache shares and receives targeting information with ground forces, naval vessels, fighter aircraft, unmanned systems, and integrated air defense units across the entire battle space. On the battlefield, a single radar-equipped Apache can scan an area, identify and classify targets, and transmit that data to every other Apache in the formation, to ground-based artillery units, to warships offshore, and to fighter aircraft overhead. None of those other assets need their own line of sight to the target. They can fire based on the Apache's data alone, creating a distributed kill chain that is nearly impossible for an adversary to disrupt by destroying any single platform. The version 6 software package adds the small tactical terminal radio, which brings soldier radio waveform connectivity alongside the existing Link 16 capability. This dual networking architecture allows the Apache to communicate seamlessly with both conventional military data networks and the tactical radios carried by infantry squads on the ground. The helicopter becomes a mobile command node, bridging the gap between air and ground forces in a way that no previous attack helicopter could achieve. But here is what makes the AH-64E's networking capability even more significant than the hardware itself. The February 2024 Aviation Investment Rebalance, which cancelled the Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft program while preserving the Apache, made this networking philosophy the centerpiece of Army aviation doctrine going forward. Rather than betting on a new airframe, the Army chose to invest in the sensors, weapons, data links, and unmanned teaming capabilities that keep the Apache relevant against adversaries who are fielding their own drones, surface-to-air missiles, and electronic warfare systems. Under updated Army doctrine in Field Manual 304, aviation brigades are described as tools for penetrating and disrupting layered enemy defenses across land, air, cyber, and the electromagnetic spectrum. Apache battalions work as composite packages alongside Grey Eagle drones, artillery, integrated air and missile defense, and electronic warfare units. The helicopter that once hunted Soviet tanks on the plains of Central Europe now coordinates an entire ecosystem of sensors, shooters, and jammers from its tandem cockpit. The Apache fleet has accumulated over 5.3 million total flight hours and 1.3 million in combat, numbers that underscore just how deeply integrated this platform is in American military operations worldwide. Boeing continues to deliver new AH-64Es with a $4.7 billion contract awarded in recent years for additional aircraft destined for both the United States Army and international partners. Poland alone has 96 on order, making it the largest international Apache customer in history. And that is the reality Iran now faces. You are not fighting a single helicopter or even a squadron of them. You are fighting a network that sees, shares, adapts, and strikes from every direction at once. Each Apache in the air feeds sensor data to every other platform in the area. The drones it controls extend its reach by dozens of miles. A missile it fires can be guided by data from a ship, a ground station, or another aircraft entirely. So what happens when you manage to shoot one down? The network redistributes the workload across every remaining node and continues engaging without missing a beat. The AH-64 Apache entered service more than 40 years ago. In that time, it has fired the opening shots of Desert Storm from 50 feet above the Iraqi desert, provided close air support across 2 decades of conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan, proven itself as a counter-drone platform against Iranian-made Shaheds over the Persian Gulf, and evolved into a networked command node that controls unmanned systems from its cockpit. The airframe is familiar. That tandem cockpit silhouette has been recognizable on battlefields since 1986. But what sits inside that airframe in 2026? The Longbow radar, tracking 100 targets through a sandstorm, the MUMTX mast controlling a swarm of drones from beyond the horizon, the Link 16 data link turning every Apache into a node in a kill chain that spans hundreds of miles, bears almost no resemblance to the helicopter that General Schwarzkopf trusted to pluck out the eyes of Iraq's air defenses 35 years ago. And for anyone facing it across a contested battlefield, that gap between what the Apache looks like and what it can actually do remains the most dangerous secret of all.